Emergencies often sneak up on us when we least expect them, and those moments can be a lot less stressful if we've already done some thinking, planning, and quiet preparation ahead of time. You might have seen news reports about extreme weather, long-term power outages, or civil unrest, and wondered how you'd handle a situation like that if it happened in your own backyard. The simple truth is, the systems we depend on, like water, electricity, food delivery, and communication networks, are usually reliable, but they're not invincible. When a disruption does occur, it helps to be able to rely on more than luck. My hope here is to show you that preparedness doesn't have to feel daunting, expensive, or paranoid. It's really about working small, yet steady steps into your normal life so you have enough supplies, skills, and support to see you through those rough patches. Together, we'll look at the key areas that can help you face an emergency with a level head. Having a flexible mindset, gathering and storing the right items, safeguarding enough food and water, staying safe and secure, addressing medical and hygiene needs, leaning on a supportive community, and making sure you keep your knowledge and abilities fresh. If you find this conversation helpful, I'd love for you to stick around, share your own insights, and help grow a community that's committed to readiness and resilience. And with that, let's begin by looking at the mindset that makes all these practical steps truly come together. Preparedness might bring to mind images of huge stockpiles or bunkers hidden away in remote places, but at its heart, it starts in your mind long before you collect a single item. It's an outlook that says, I can't predict every problem life throws my way, but I can do a few things right now that will help me adapt when the unexpected happens. You could think of it like an investment, except instead of putting money into a retirement account, you're investing time, thought, and resources into making sure you and the people you care about can handle a range of scenarios that disrupt your day-to-day life. A big piece of that mental puzzle is understanding that it's not about living in fear or assuming the worst is on the horizon. It's about taking control where you can. Maybe you experienced a short power outage before and felt anxious when you realized how dark and quiet everything became. Or perhaps you've seen storms wipe out grocery supplies. These examples don't mean that the sky is always falling, but they do serve as small wake-up calls. They show us that a calm approach to gathering knowledge, practicing skills, and setting aside crucial resources can pay off in tangible ways. Let's also talk about self-reliance and community reliance, because they actually work in tandem. When an emergency hits, it's empowering to know you have a stash of food and water that can carry you through the initial chaos, or that you've practiced first aid so you're less reliant on a possibly overloaded medical system. At the same time, building relationships with neighbors and friends means you're not going it alone. Sometimes just having one or two other households you trust can turn a nerve-wracking event into a shared effort that leaves everyone better equipped. A balanced mindset appreciates that you want a personal plan, but don't want to shut out the power of collective support. Another big component of mental preparedness is knowing how to stay steady when emotions run high. It's normal to feel fear and worry when events spiral beyond your control. But with a little practice, such as learning breathing exercises, planning out how you'd handle a given crisis, and mentally rehearsing small tasks like cooking without power or filtering water, you're training yourself to manage stress. Then when something does happen, you've already got a framework of calm to lean on, rather than trying to invent a solution on the fly. Mindset is also about realizing that not everything you plan for will happen in the exact way you envisioned. You might stock up for an earthquake, but end up facing a flash flood. Or you might have a plan to stay put during an emergency, and then discover you have to leave unexpectedly. Adaptability is your best friend here, so try to avoid tunnel vision. Remind yourself that many disasters have overlapping consequences: power loss, water scarcity, communication blackouts, or supply chain interruptions. Once you see that preparing for one event naturally gives you a foothold for others, the planning process becomes less about doomsday and more about sensible, all-around readiness. Remember that you don't need to do everything overnight. The strongest preparedness plans often grow bit by bit. Maybe this month you learn how to store water safely, next month you expand your first aid supplies, and the month after you practice an alternative cooking method. Each small step forward reinforces that you've got this, and together, they build the foundation for dealing with whatever life might unexpectedly toss in your path. Now let's use that mental groundwork to see how we can collect and organize the physical items that can help us weather short-term and long-term disruptions. When you first dip a toe into the world of preparedness, the sheer number of potential items, food, water, gear, tools, can feel overwhelming. But in reality, selecting the right things can be as simple as asking, if my daily routine got interrupted for a while, what would I need to get by? Think about stuff you already use. Clothing, hygiene items, a way to cook meals if the power goes out, a flashlight for when the lights don't come back on. Then add in some specialized supplies, like a multi-tool or battery bank, and you'll start to see a core emerge that fits your personal situation. One of the most useful pieces of advice is to start by designating a storage area. It could be a corner of a closet, a garage shelf, or a series of plastic tubs under your bed, whatever space you can reasonably claim. You'll want to group like items together. Keep the hygiene stuff in one place, tools in another, and so forth. By using clear bins or labeling them, you don't have to guess which container holds the medical supplies versus the one with your extra batteries. This might sound basic, but in a stressed or rushed scenario, clear organization can save precious minutes and limit the frustration of digging through clutter. Part of building up your supplies is thinking about layers. Your everyday items are the things you reach for constantly. The normal food in your kitchen, your phone charger, your daily medications. Next, you might have a quick go bag or emergency kit that's packed with essentials you'd need if you had to leave your home quickly. Maybe that kit has a few days of non-perishable food, water pouches, a flashlight, spare clothing, and important documents like passports and birth certificates. For bigger disruptions, you'd have your more robust home storage, large water containers, a decent stash of shelf-stable food, backup cooking methods, extra fuel, and more elaborate medical gear. Testing your gear before it's actually needed is another step that often gets overlooked. If you buy a fancy water filter, try using it on a hike to familiarize yourself with its quirks. If you have a small butane stove, cook a meal on it in your backyard so you're not grappling with instructions at the worst possible moment. The same goes for flashlights or lanterns. Make sure they work, and keep a note to check their batteries every few months. Redundancy can be a lifesaver. If you rely on a single flashlight and it breaks or the batteries fail, you'll be left in the dark. Having a backup light source or a different way to illuminate your space, like a few candles or a headlamp, means you're not pinned to one point of failure. The same logic applies to cooking methods, fire-starting tools, or water purification systems. Two simpler solutions can often be better than one complicated high-end device. Keep track of expiration dates, especially when it comes to food, batteries, and medical supplies. Doing a simple rotation every 6 months or year, depending on the items, ensures you don't end up with a stack of expired goods you can't use. This rotation can be as easy as occasionally cooking meals from your stored foods and replacing them with new stock. This approach also helps you stay familiar with how that food tastes and how to prepare it, so there are fewer surprises if you really need to rely on it. And since food is such a crucial piece of the puzzle, let's dive more deeply into how you can build a sustainable stockpile. There's something comforting about knowing you could open your pantry and feed yourself and your loved ones for days or even weeks if the usual food supply lines ground to a halt. That doesn't mean hoarding more cans than you can ever eat. It means being deliberate in how you select, store, and rotate your food so it's ready when you need it. A popular first step is to stock extra amounts of what you already like to eat. Maybe you're a big fan of chili, canned vegetables, pasta, or tuna fish. Buying a couple more cans each time you shop, rather than getting an overwhelming cartload all at once, lets you build a steady surplus. Over time, that surplus becomes your cushion against short-term disruptions. If finances allow, you might then look into freeze-dried meals or dehydrated foods that can last for years. They're typically more expensive up front, but the long shelf life can be worth it, especially if you have limited pantry space. Balance is key. While it's easy to fill your cart with canned spaghetti sauce, peanut butter, or beans, eating the same 3 or 4 foods for a week can be rough on both your digestion and your morale. Make room for a range of proteins, carbohydrates, and healthy fats, and don't forget some items that add flavor like salt, spices, or bouillon cubes. You can also tuck away treats like chocolate or dehydrated fruit. In an emergency, a bit of sweetness can do wonders for morale. Storing your food properly is essential to ensure it's still good when you need it. High heat and humidity can degrade both taste and nutritional value. A cool, dry, dark spot is best. If you live in a climate that's really hot or humid, you may need to get creative, like storing your long-term items in an interior closet or a cool basement. Some people use mylar bags and oxygen absorbers to store staples like rice, beans, or oatmeal, sealing them into buckets that keep out light and pests. If you do go this route, remember to label containers with the packing date so you know how old each batch is. Once you have a reasonable supply, practice the habit of first in, first out. Use the oldest items first and replace them with new ones. This rotation keeps your stock fresh and ensures you don't have to toss out a bunch of expired cans years down the line. Also, try cooking meals from your stored foods every so often so you know how to prepare them quickly. There's a comfort in being able to whip up a favorite dish without depending on fresh ingredients or a last-minute grocery run. Still, even the most carefully packed pantry won't keep you alive if you don't have water to go along with it. Cooking, washing, and basic hydration all depend on a safe water source. So let's look at water next, because you can survive a stretch without a hearty meal, but you certainly can't survive long without something to drink. Water is so simple and yet so critical that it's often called the cornerstone of survival. When it's always flowing from the tap, it's easy to forget that a whole infrastructure is behind that convenience. Pumps, pipes, filtration systems that can fail without warning. That's why storing water and learning how to purify additional sources are both so important. A commonly suggested baseline is at least 1 gallon of water per person per day, enough to cover drinking, cooking, and basic hygiene. Storing a 3-day supply is a good start, but many people find extra peace of mind by storing a couple of weeks' worth if they have room for it. You can use food-grade plastic containers, water bricks, or even repurposed bottles as long as they're cleaned thoroughly. Some folks invest in large barrels, say 55-gallon drums, that can be filled with treated water and kept in a garage or basement. If you do something like that, just be sure you have a plan for rotating the water every so often, and that the barrel is in a location where you can actually get the water out when needed. Filtration and purification are your backup lines of defense. Maybe there's a nearby creek or a water catchment system you can tap into, or you've got a rain barrel outside. A portable filter designed for camping can often remove bacteria and protozoa, though you'll want to check whether it handles viruses if you're traveling internationally or dealing with questionable local water. Chemical treatments like iodine or chlorine dioxide tablets can also help, though they do change the taste. Boiling remains a classic method, effective at killing pathogens if you can bring the water to a steady boil for at least a minute or two. However, boiling won't remove chemicals or heavy metals, so if you suspect those contaminants, you'll need a more specialized filter or distillation process. Be mindful of how you collect, handle, and store water. Even a clean supply can get contaminated if you use a dirty container or let unclean objects touch it. Safe hygiene practices, like washing your hands before handling water containers, still matter a lot during an emergency, because a single contamination incident can make a whole batch undrinkable. And think beyond just drinking water. Washing dishes, flushing toilets, bathing, and cleaning wounds all consume water. Factoring these uses into your plan might lead you to store more than you initially expect. After ensuring you've got a handle on water, the next big question is security. Security doesn't have to mean high walls or an armory in the basement. It's usually a layered approach that starts with common sense and good relationships. In many emergencies, the simplest deterrent can be a house that looks occupied and well-maintained. That could mean sturdy doors and locks, motion sensor lights that illuminate anyone approaching at night, and fences or gates that are in good repair. Criminals often seek out easy targets, so basic steps can make them think twice. Knowing your neighbors can be a game changer. Even just chatting occasionally or coordinating on small community projects can build trust. If a crisis happens, you'll have a sense of who you can rely on or share alerts with. A watchful community can discourage theft or looting far more effectively than one person holed up alone. Plus, your neighbors might have diverse skills, like mechanical know-how, medical training, or gardening expertise, and you have your own skills to offer in return. When it comes to personal protection, opinions vary. Some people are comfortable with non-lethal tools such as pepper spray or a stun device. Others train with firearms or bows. There's no one-size-fits-all choice here, but it's crucial to understand the laws in your area, get proper training, and store these tools responsibly. Using a firearm without regular practice can be more dangerous than not having one at all, so if you choose that route, make sure you're fully committed to learning how to handle it safely and effectively. Situational awareness is another important aspect of security. In good times, it's easy to walk around with headphones in or eyes glued to a phone, not paying attention to what's happening on the street. During a crisis, It helps to be more mindful of your surroundings. Is there broken glass on the sidewalk that could mean vandalism? Are local shops boarded up because of unrest? Awareness helps you avoid unsafe areas and pick the best times to travel if you need to get somewhere. Planning for security can also mean designating safer areas within your home, like a room with a sturdy door and perhaps a small stash of emergency supplies. If for some reason it becomes unsafe to stay in your usual living space, you can move to that room until help arrives or until the threat passes. It's also wise to keep a low profile. If others know you have substantial stockpiles, you could become a target. Balancing helpfulness in your community with the need for privacy is tricky, but you can extend assistance in ways that don't broadcast everything you have. At the end of the day, security is about minimizing your vulnerabilities, knowing when to stand your ground, and knowing when to remove yourself from a dangerous situation entirely. The next topic, medical and hygiene preparedness, fits neatly with this theme because staying safe includes staying healthy. In a best-case scenario, paramedics show up quickly when someone's hurt, or you can drive down the street to the nearest clinic if you're sick. But in a large-scale emergency or disaster, the local healthcare system could be overwhelmed, or you might not be able to travel safely to a medical facility. That's why having a well-rounded first aid kit and the know-how to use it can be invaluable. You can start by building on a basic off-the-shelf first aid kit. Add extra rolls of gauze, sterile bandages, and gloves. Include over-the-counter medications like pain relievers, antihistamines for allergic reactions, and anti-inflammatory drugs. Consider adding a tourniquet, hemostatic dressings, or a suture kit if you've been trained to handle serious wounds. If you or a family member relies on prescription meds, do your best to set aside a small buffer supply, even if it means coordinating with your doctor or insurance. Keep a list of medications, dosages, and known allergies in case you need to go to an emergency clinic somewhere unfamiliar. Chronic medical conditions require extra planning. If someone in your household needs regular treatments or has a condition like diabetes, you might need to store insulin properly or have a reliable backup power source for equipment like a CPAP machine. Some people keep a small generator with enough fuel to run vital medical devices, or they look into battery backups that can be recharged via solar panels in a pinch. Test any backup system you plan to rely on. Don't wait until the power goes out to find out your generator won't start. Hygiene is also key to preventing disease outbreaks. If water is scarce or contaminated, a stash of hand sanitizer and disinfecting wipes can help keep germs at bay. Simple acts like washing your hands thoroughly can do more for preventing illness than a bottle of fancy supplements, so don't overlook it. Storing extra toilet paper, feminine hygiene products, diapers if you have a baby, and heavy-duty trash bags for waste can all make a stressful situation more manageable. If your toilets stop working, some folks set up a bucket system with a seat, liners, and something like kitty litter or sawdust to absorb odors, keeping sanitary conditions in check. A less obvious area is mental health. Crises can stir up anxiety, depression, or even panic in individuals who were previously coping well. Finding small ways to relieve stress, like listening to music, reading a favorite book, or sharing stories with close friends, can help keep everyone's spirits up. If you're in a group setting, simply having someone who checks in with each person regularly can ease tension and remind everyone that they're supported. By actively prepping in the medical and hygiene department, you not only reduce the chances of a crisis turning into a personal disaster, you also become an asset to your neighbors and friends if someone else runs into trouble. And that sense of a supportive network leads us naturally into our next focus, the community and communication factors that can play such a large role in how we endure tough times. Even the most self-sufficient person benefits from community support in a crisis. Having others nearby who share information, trade supplies, or offer a helping hand can make a tough situation more bearable and sometimes safer. It starts with something as simple as introducing yourself to the people who live around you. Not everyone is going to become your best friend, but at least you'll recognize faces and maybe have a basic rapport in place before any emergencies happen. As you get to know people, you might learn who has certain skills, like a neighbor who knows car repair, or someone who grew up on a farm and can troubleshoot your garden problems, or a retired nurse who can answer medical questions when the clinic is booked. In a real crisis, combining those skills can form a mini safety net, especially if formal services are slow to arrive or can't handle the volume of calls. Some communities even form small neighborhood groups or text chains to send quick updates about local power outages, suspicious activity, or weather alerts. Communication devices can vary. When phones and the internet are working, those are obviously great, but if cell towers go down or bandwidth becomes overloaded, you might consider walkie-talkies, ham radios, or even older technologies like CB radios. Learning how to operate a ham radio does take effort and often a license, but it can connect you with people beyond your local area, sometimes across the entire country, depending on conditions. Even if you're not a radio enthusiast, having one or two handheld devices around can keep you connected in ways that a silent cell phone can't. Sharing resources can be beneficial, but do it thoughtfully. If you make it widely known that you have a massive stockpile, you might become a target for unscrupulous individuals. Instead, you could quietly offer a bit of help to neighbors you trust, or coordinate trades that don't draw too much attention. For instance, maybe you swap some fresh produce from your garden for someone else's help repairing a leaky roof. These little exchanges build a sense of mutual trust without turning you into a local warehouse. Community isn't just about practical help, it's also about emotional support. Knowing others have your back can reduce panic, relieve loneliness, and make the effort of rebuilding or cleaning up after a disaster feel less crushing. Conversations shared over a campfire or within a quiet living room by candlelight can carry people through some dark moments, literally and figuratively. Of course, all the goodwill in the world won't help if you and your neighbors can't figure out how to do critical tasks like filter water, set up a generator, or provide first aid. That's why our last topic is so crucial. We need to keep our skills and knowledge from gathering dust. Preparedness is never truly done because the world changes, technology evolves, and skills fade if they're not practiced. It's one thing to watch a video on how to split wood with an axe, but if you never actually swing one, you won't be proficient when you really need to build a fire. The same logic applies to cooking on a propane stove, treating a wound, or operating a shortwave radio. Repetition builds muscle memory and confidence. One of the easiest ways to keep your skills sharp is to use them in everyday life where it makes sense. For example, if you're storing a particular brand of freeze-dried meal, cook one of them for dinner occasionally so you remember how much water is needed and how long it takes to rehydrate. If you've stashed away a solar panel, try hooking it up on a sunny weekend and power something simple like a small fan or charge your phone. Regular usage helps you spot gear failures early. Periodic practice emergencies can be enlightening. Turn off your main breaker for an afternoon so your home is without power. Then see how everyone copes. Does your family know where the flashlights and lanterns are? Do you have enough battery banks for crucial electronics? Are you able to cook a meal easily, or does it become a huge headache? These trial runs highlight any gaps so you can fix them before a real emergency hits. Learning new skills can be a social activity too. Get friends or neighbors together for a first aid refresher or a canning workshop. If you have a passion for gardening, invite someone over who wants to learn the basics. Trading skills and knowledge fosters a sense of community and ensures that you're not the only person who knows how to filter water or operate a portable heater. In a real emergency, it helps if multiple people can handle critical tasks. Staying up to date also means keeping an eye on technology and rotating your supplies. If a new type of compact water filter becomes available or battery technology improves, it might be worth upgrading. Check expiration dates on medication and food at least every 6 months or year. Batteries can corrode over time, so make sure flashlights and devices with removable batteries aren't at risk of leaking acid. Reviewing and updating your plans and letting the people you live with know about any changes can keep everyone in sync. The point is to treat preparedness as a steady, evolving part of life. You don't want to wait for a real catastrophe to open up your emergency gear for the first time or dust off knowledge from a class you took 5 years ago. The more you engage with your preparations through small, regular doses of real practice, the more you internalize a calm, adaptive attitude. Now, let's finish up by weaving these threads together so you can move forward with clarity and a sense of purpose. Preparedness doesn't have to be an overwhelming or secretive project. It's more like a lifestyle choice that says you're going to plan a little bit for the unexpected. Invest in knowledge, build connections with people around you, and keep your resources organized so they're ready at a moment's notice. By understanding that emergencies can come in many shapes, power outages, severe storms, medical crises, or supply chain interruptions, you begin to see how these planning steps add value, not just for a hypothetical extreme scenario, but for smaller disruptions that can happen anytime. Even though you've heard a lot of ideas and suggestions, remember that you don't have to do it all at once. Pick one area that feels most urgent or doable. Maybe it's starting a basic food and water supply, adding some extra items to your first aid kit, or talking with a neighbor about creating a simple communication plan. Each little improvement you make is a building block that strengthens your overall resilience. Over time, these changes accumulate, and you'll notice a sense of calm confidence replacing any nagging worry. If any of these topics sparked your interest, I'd love for you to explore them further. Connect with others who share the same goals and keep refining your approach. Feel free to share your experiences, advice, or even missteps with people who are on a similar journey. The more we cooperate and exchange knowledge, the better off we all are. And if you found this conversation useful, consider passing it along to a friend or subscribing so you can stay in the loop on future insights about practical, hands-on ways to stay prepared. Above all, remember that preparedness is not a destination you arrive at once and for all. It's a path you walk step by step, guided by the idea that you can shape a more secure and self-reliant life. Thank you for being here and for caring enough to learn these skills. Let's keep moving forward together, confident that we have what it takes to handle life's surprises and help those around us do the same.